Good afternoon, everyone, both in the boardroom and on Zoom. Um, Welcome to this meeting of the Berkeley Unified School District Personnel Commission for June 26th, 2024. And I see Commissioner Carter is entering the room right now. Perfect timing. I did want to say we have a very lengthy agenda today. So let's all try to be as expeditious as we possibly can so that we can get through as much of this agenda within the time allowed as we can. So the meeting is called to order, and Mr. Secretary, could you call the roll and establish the quorum, please?
Thank you, Chairman Roeder. Chairman Roeder,
Here.
Vice Chairman Carter,
Here.
and Commissioner Goldstein.
Present.
Okay, a quorum is established, and now it's the opportunity for public comments, both in the boardroom and on Zoom. We are going to provide 15 minutes for public comments. As you know, the commissioners don't respond specifically to the comments that the public makes, but we do note them and keep them in mind for sure. So is there anyone in the boardroom who would like to make a public comment at this time? Please step forward to the podium, and if you could identify yourself and go right ahead.
Hello, Tim Donnelly, retiree and substitute. There is an absolute epidemic of classified work right now being done by outside contractors. This is against the Ed Code. It's against the merit rules. And in 2011, BCCE sued this district over this same issue, and there's a signed writ of mandate. Look it up. So if BCCE went to the court again, we wouldn't have to litigate. We would just have to waive the writ of mandate. There's just no excuse for classified work being done by outside contractors or substitutes when there are permanent employees who want to work this summer.
Thank you, Mr. Donnelly. Anyone else in the boardroom? Seeing no one, we'll go to our Zoom participants. If you could raise your virtual hand and you will be recognized. I don't see anyone yet. Give it a couple of moments here. Sarah, do you see anyone in? Oh, there we are. Rod Caraway, you are recognized. Mr. Caraway, I think you may be muted.
Hello, yes, good evening. My name is Roderick Caraway. I'm a lead maintenance engineer, and I just wanted to state about the classification study. I didn't know it was in phase 4. I never received any information regarding the, after we submitted our edits, and I just think it's not fair that is going to the final phase without any more input, or we didn't see what the edits were after it went back, after we did our edits. So I'm protesting, not in agreement to it going into phase 4. And I also didn't agree with the districts that were used. I don't know if there was any input from the committee, but I looked at some of the districts and the job classifications didn't match up. For instance, our maintenance technician is different than Pleasanton, Livermore, Alameda, and Hayward. On a couple of those sites, they're equivalent to our maintenance engineer. And I just don't agree with using the maintenance technician. They should have used the maintenance engineer. So then that way they could go, if it's not an engineer in the neighboring, the districts that we use as comparisons, then they could go to the trade. So that's all I wanted to sound off on. And thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Caraway. Anyone else online on Zoom who would like to make a public comment? We have a couple more minutes. I don't see anyone at this time. Okay, we will close the public comments at this point, and we'll move to the approval and adoption of the agenda. Any comments beside the fact that it's a very, very lengthy agenda, but any other comments on the approval and adoption of the agenda from the commissioners? I have none. Okay, Mr. Castillo, please.
Sorry, Chairman Roder. It looks like Malika did have her hand up before we close public comment. Is it okay to hear Malika's comment?
I see. Okay, just in the nick of time, Malik Upshur, you want to go ahead and make your public comment? And this
my public comment is on the behalf of the compensation and class restudy. Class and compensation study. And being a part of the committee, I have a lot of concerns regarding the decisions being made. And I'm going to come back at the end of the later part of the conversation regarding, the public comments regarding this. But I did want to put it up front to let it be known that I will be coming back to discuss my concerns once we actually go into discussion about it. Okay.
That's fine. I'm a little concerned whether we will get to the final public comment because we have
I
such.
know we have a long, we have a very long, lengthy.
I will try to allow enough time for a short public comment at the end, if we can at all do so.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, now, Mr. Castillo, you were going to make a comment, I think, about the approval and adoption of the agenda.
No, Chairman, I just wanted to make sure that since Malika had her hand up, yeah.
Oh, okay.
have it.
All right. Do we have a motion on the agenda?
I'll motion to go ahead and approve as it is.
I second. Moved and seconded, and I agree to approve and adopt our agenda for today's meeting. Number 5 then is the approval of the meeting minutes for May 24th, 2024, which was sent to us in advance. Any comments on those minutes?
None for me.
Don't see any comments. Is there a motion to approve the meeting minutes?
A motion to approve?
Been moved
And I'll second.
and seconded, and I agree also. So the May 24th, 2024 regular meeting minutes are approved as presented. We will go on to our reports and start with our union reports. Is there anyone either in the boardroom or on Zoom who would like to report on behalf of the union? I don't think I'm seeing anyone. Okay, we'll move on to the district reports. Is there anyone present? I don't see anyone present in the boardroom from the district, and I'm not sure I see anyone on Zoom either. Sarah, can you confirm that? No. Okay, so no district report, commissioners reports. Either of our two commissioners like to make a report at this time?
I have no reports.
No report from me.
And in the interest of time, I'm not going to make a report either. So we're on now to the personnel director's report. Mr. Castillo.
Thank you, Chairman Roder. Before I go on to my report, can I make a motion to move discussion item 9A ahead of conference item 8A? Sorry, 9B, sorry, 9B, thank you. 9B ahead of 8A and 8B. And the reason for that is I believe that discussion item will inform the two conference items that are related to that discussion item.
Well, I certainly have no objection to that. We probably should have done it during the approval of the agenda, but no harm done. As long as my fellow commissioners don't have a problem with that.
No, I think it's a good idea.
I agree.
Okay, so I will move that we move item 9B ahead of item 8A on our agenda.
I second.
Moved and seconded. Commissioner Goldstein agrees. That will be the order then. Okay,
Thank you.
so now, yes.
I'm sorry I missed the agenda there. I was so great. Thank you. This is our last meeting of the fiscal year. I did want to start by thanking Erin and her team. The summer school program is in full swing at this point. It begun as early as February. Some of the planning for summer school starts really around February. And the Personnel Commission team, Erin and her team, they collaborated with the board-approved Expanded Learning Opportunities Program to discuss the program staffing. We commission staff posted job openings for the summer school assignments back in March and April, and in total, 154 applications were received and 130 classified staff positions were successfully filled for the summer. So again, I wanted to thank Erin and her team and Christy and her team for all of the good work. We also had, just to jump ahead on, we're trying to keep everything brief tonight because of the agenda. I wanted to report out that I did do a survey of the steering committee members regarding the classification compensation study. We had 7 respondents. I will say that majority of them were constructive, but not entirely positive. I think that there were issues with the steering committee clarity and its mission, delays and other things. And I do plan to share the survey responses with you so you can read them for yourself. But 7 of the steering committee members did respond. So I'll make that available to you. Yes.
Is that about half of the
It's about
steering
half.
committee?
Yeah, it's
Okay.
about half.
Okay.
As always, we report out our exams. We had a particularly slow, uncharacteristically slow month, but I will say that that was due to layoffs. And we wanted to take direction from the district on what we could or couldn't do exams for. So there were 39 total exams done in the month of May. 5 of them were oral, 10 were written, and 24 were training and experience. The exams themselves were school bus driver, facilities, a security officer, IT, before and after school, and the director of nutrition services. We had 8 new hires, and these positions, I'm very happy to report out are positions that you'll know once I read a few of them out are in high need. Nutrition services assistant, school bus driver, IA2 sped, sous chef. So real key recruitments that were filled despite the unfortunate circumstance of layoffs. Tonight, we're going to discuss item 9A, which is the report put out by EHA. I know they're here to do a presentation. So again, I'll kind of close with this. I do believe, in my own opinion, as a steering committee chair, that the report in its totality has a lot of useful information. I know that there's a lot in there. So I welcome all of you to email me and ask me for clarifying questions or more details if you need it. If I don't have the answer, I'll reach out to EHA. But on the whole, I think there's very valuable information in phase 3 and phase 4. Your team, your personnel commission team is also in there. There are also proposed reclassifications. There are proposed increases. So there's a lot in there that they're recommending, and I definitely think it's on the whole, a good report and useful. My hope is that we can schedule a follow-up possible recommendation meeting for August so that we can do a part 2 after everyone's had a chance to review the report. And I'd like to, if I may, suggest that we start as early as August, because it's my understanding the district is going to be going into contract negotiations with the unions in the fall. So the sooner we can come back with recommendations to the board and the district, the better. So with that, I will close. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Castillo. Since we're still on reports, I'm going to backtrack a little tiny bit and see if at this point there is any union report that anyone would like to make. Okay, we're gonna close off. You're welcome. We're gonna close the reports and move on to item 7, which is consent items. There's one eligibility list to be ratified, and that's the Director of Nutrition Services. Any questions on that?
No questions. Happy to see actually 4 separate ranks, 2 promotional and 2 open. It's more than we've seen in a while.
Yeah, I agree with that. If there are no additional questions about it, is there a motion or a comment?
I motion to approve.
I'll second.
And I agree with that. So the eligibility list for the Director of Nutrition Services is approved unanimously. And now we're on to conference items, sort of, but we're going to first have a discussion item ahead of that, which is item 9B, which is the advanced step rubric and process. That's attachment I on our agenda. And Mr. Castillo, I'm sure you're going to be presenting that.
Thank you, Chairman Roeder. Yeah, and thank you for indulging my request. I think it just makes more sense to go right from this into the step advance requests. So as you all know, we've all, as a commission, been discussing the process and the criteria and rubrics around what goes into making a recommendation. So I did my own research on many of these requests, and I talked to my staff, and I looked at our recruitments, and really what we came down with is I tried to provide the 3 of you a comprehensive one-pager as to the background information, the merit rule that we use, and contributing factors to difficult recruitment. And I'd like to just, if I may, just go through it very quickly and then open it up to questions that you may have. So I know that the merit rules are being revised. I was until very recently a part of that project. And I think that one of the potential issues with the current language in initial placement is that there are things in it that are implicit and I think that there's an effort to make it a little bit more explicit. So I look forward to possibly clarifying some of this language. But this is the language that exists right now. You'll notice recruitment, I bolded, recruitment efforts have indicated difficulty in recruiting at that step. That is definitely a guiding principle in looking at this. So we did take into account what Vice Chairman Carter had mentioned in regards to what establishes a difficult recruitment. And the challenge that we had in terms of formulating an actual Excel rubric is that there is a very fluid nature to the recruitment in our cycle. It's never the same. It does change month to month. But I'll go through that really quick in terms of a contributing factor. The first one is the number of applicants is low. We will see that consistently, still see it consistently with the IA SPED. A lot of the IAs, a lot of the ITs, we continue to have very low applications for those. Another contributing factor when we analyze the advanced step is the number of vacancies. It could be that we have more than one vacancy, which makes the recruitment challenging. When we have one, if we have 4 applicants and we have 3 on the list, great. But if we have 5 vacancies for that recruitment, it makes it quite challenging. We also mentioned the eligibility list with fewer than 3 ranks. It makes it difficult for the hiring manager when we provide a hiring manager with 2 applicants instead of the 3, which does happen. The number of recruitments it takes to fill a vacancy, and that is that sometimes the candidates are no longer available by the time we get to them. Sometimes we bring before the Personnel Commission a list that's somewhat robust, only to go back and say, well, you've taken 3 months. I'm no longer available, and that also happens. High turnover. Some positions just have a high turnover. We're going to cover one of those tonight. Bilingual recruitment challenges. Bilingual positions are always difficult to recruit for. And then lastly, we don't see this. This is not a factor consistently with all of our positions because they are very school specific. But when we get into maintenance engineers, irrigation specialists, tech people, we're competing with private sector, and that also becomes a problem. So these were the determining factors that we have used and do use to make a recommendation. When we make the recommendation, and again, we evaluate this every time we make a recommendation for a specific position. We don't assume that because last month it was we didn't receive very many applications that this month we did, or vice versa. One example of that is that we used to, when I got here, we didn't have a lot of applicants for some of those admin positions, but now we have a lot of them. So it does change, and we can't always predict what positions are going to be difficult to fill or not. So with that, I open it to questions or discussion. Thank you.
Did you want to, I'm just wondering if you wanted to go over that, the evaluation criteria as well, and then we can ask questions about everything.
Oh, sure. The actual real life examples, 8A and 8B, I can do that. Yeah.
No, if I'm not mistaken, in attachment I, the next page is advanced step request, and you have quantified how you differentiate between step 2, step
Oh, thank you.
3,
Yes.
step
Thank
4.
you. I double, oh, here we go. Thank you. I had my pages out of order. Forgive me. Thank you, Chairman Roeder. So the second part to this is the advanced step request evaluation criteria. So when we look at the application and we look at the position, and we've established that it meets some of the criteria highlighted in the first page, we then look at how do we quantify each step in terms of a recommendation. So for instance, the education qualification. And what that means is, in the first bullet, completed degree from an accredited college or university related to the minimum qualifications of the position. So it may be that the bachelor's degree, for example, is not required as a minimum qualification, but they're bringing that, and that could count as a step. Or if it's not a degree, we also count a training certificate or something related in terms of a certificate related to the position. So we've had instances in which someone is an IA SPED 2, they request a step advance and they have a SPED certificate. So we would count that. And then in terms of experience, we use 1 year of experience for every one step of directly related experience. Obviously not exceeding 4 steps. So that would mean that we look at the resume. So for example, if it's an HR person and they worked somewhere else as an HR person in that role, we would count that as 1 year. If it's a year of experience, we would count that for a recommendation for 1 step.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Mr. Castillo. Now, questions and comments from our commissioners. Commissioner Goldstein, please go ahead.
If I might, just one question about how you count years of experience or fractional years of experience.
I add them. We have, in one of the recommendations tonight, this person had like 7 months here and then 3 months there. Well, that's 10 months, right? Or, so I will add the months, cumulatively. In regards to, it's not always clear. Sometimes folks will be somewhere for 8 months and somewhere else for 1.5 years. I still count the totality of the number of years towards that.
Mr. Carter, any comments?
Yeah, I have a couple. So when let's say when you're looking at the contributing factors, how does that calculate into their step? So for example, let's say there is 3 of the 4 issues for recruitment. You got low applicants, high vacancy, and high turnover. How does that calculate into what step increase you recommend?
It doesn't calculate into a step. It calculates as a criteria. So it's a qualifier. These steps are on the second page. So the steps are the education and the experience. The criteria is, these are 7 factors that will define a difficult recruitment. So that's what I'm providing. These are 7 examples as to what we would define as a difficult recruitment.
So any one of the 7 would allow or would open the door for a step request? So any
Yes.
one of the 7, not 3 of the 7 or 4, but any one of these 7 criteria would then move us to the educational piece to move them.
Yes. Yes.
Are there any other factors other than the 7 here let's just say before the door is open to a step increase request, other than the difficulty in recruiting?
There may be, but I believe we've covered everything, but
I might, if I might,
Please.
just because I remember this historically, and I just want to make sure everyone is seeing it the same way I am. The high turnover positions, which sometimes I call high velocity positions, can be a tricky one. Where we have dozens of IAs, it looks like high turnover because things happen and people leave jobs all the time. I think particularly for the singleton roles, these become really important. And especially high turnover in a singleton role is really something that affects operations. So, that's something that isn't explicit in here, but it's an important criteria.
I do want to say, I want to thank you for putting this together. I'm not necessarily, I know I've been asking for it for a while, and I appreciate you actually taking taking a time and putting it together in a very clear, concise format, so everyone can follow what your process is in the step request process. So I really appreciate that.
Thank you.
Okay,
I'd
I'll
like to
make,
thank my
I'll
team
make,
because they helped. So, thank you.
I'll make a couple of comments. So first off, I absolutely agree with Vice Chairperson Carter that I would call it sort of transparency, the attempt to make it as clear to applicants and new hires what the rules are and what the process is for getting a step increase. That's number one. Number two, I think we're trying to balance two different and to some extent competing desires when we're doing this. On the one hand, I think we've all heard loud and clear from BCCE and also from employees that there's a certain perceived unfairness to the fact that someone who has been around as an excellent employee for 3 or 4 years is at step 3 or step 4 or something like that, or may have taken so many more years to get to step 5. And here we have somebody brand new to the district who's immediately going into step 5. I, for one, and I think everyone understands that perception. The competing goal is recruitment. We need to have, there are difficult positions to recruit for. And a great example is the SPED IA, where that's really, really hard. And we're trying to not hire from outside agencies, and that's true for others. So we need to have incentives once we find somebody who is a good applicant, that person is happy on the job, and that we can recruit that person. So those are kind of conflicting goals that we have to be able to balance. I do think there's a degree of discretion that goes into this determination, that some positions are particularly difficult to fill, other positions may be a little bit less so. And so I think we do have to, my opinion is, give our executive director a degree of discretion while still maintaining this kind of transparency. One of the things we haven't discussed, and maybe we will discuss it when the new rules come out, is promotions. And we have had a couple of instances, I think before your current tenure, Vice Chairman Carter, where we have included not just a new hire who's brand new to the district, but someone who's promoting within the district. And that person has come forward and asked for a step increase as well. And, you know, BCCE has in its contract, if I'm remembering correctly, a floor for, I think it's like 5%. A floor for how much a promotional candidate would receive as a salary increase. But that's just a floor. That's not a ceiling. And so in the right circumstance of a particularly difficult recruitment, it seems to me at least that someone could have the ability to get a step increase on promotions. That's one of the things I think we have to make clear one way or another in our rules. And then the other thing that isn't really a part of this, and then I'll be quiet, is we need to definitely have timeframes. We need, first of all, we have been told, you know, Malika has told us that the new hire letters now state specifically that the new hire has the right to request a step increase, and I think that's a step in the right direction. And we've been using 6 months as our criteria for a deadline. You have to apply for a step increase within 6 months of hire. You know, that may be either too short or too long by a month or two. I don't know. But I think that needs to be in our rules as to how much time, and also in the letter, how much time a person has to apply. Okay, so I see there are 2 hands up remotely. And I know I took up a lot of time, but let's try to be as efficient as we can here. So I'll call on Malika Upshur first.
Thank you so much. I was trying to unmute myself, but thank you. So as an employee that has been working in for a while, I wanted to speak up about the process. So of course I did bring up in maybe the last meeting or a couple of meetings before that we have added verbiage in we have a monthly classified employee orientation. We have given them notification and told them that they have the option. But I feel like as a person that works in human resources that actually hires people and who have heard differences in opinions about the process, I would like to have a more clear process as far as the step advancement process, because in the past I was told not to tell people from the beginning, and then I come to the meetings and I'm told that we should tell them from the beginning, which I feel like we're doing at this moment now within probably a month or so. And it's like, what I feel like during these meetings is very unclear for me. It's very unclear for me as a person that's literally onboarding employees and giving them the valid information. And I want clearance for myself, transparent clearancy for myself on like what to do, because I feel like I'm hearing things in these meetings, and then it's not consistent on what I'm hearing across the board. So what I want to do is ensure that I want to make sure that all of our classified employees are aware of what their rights are and the things that they have rights for. But the fact that the Merit Commission rules specify, and it specifically says that for an employee to receive an advanced step, it has to be a position that has been hard to fill. My question to the Personnel Commission right now at this moment is, what does that mean? It doesn't mean if we have 20, 40 applicants, what does it mean? Does it mean that it's a hard position to fill in general? Does it mean that there are not enough applicants? Does it mean that the applicants that are being placed upon for a recommendation do not meet the needs of the department? It needs to be a very clear standard, in my opinion, for what that means. And it leaves too much room available to discuss what does that mean. It doesn't talk about a person having certain education. It doesn't talk about experience. It specifies and specifically says that an employee has to be a position that is hard to fill. So I feel like we're making these during these meetings. I feel like it's great because it's helping in the moment, but I feel like in the long haul, we have to really specify what exactly the verbiage is saying. Because are we saying that they can have a certain experience level? Because there's people that's been working for a district for a very long time. They don't go through this process because they're offered a position at a certain rate off of what they applied for. But the merit rules specify, and it says that it has to be a position that was hard to fill. Or I might be paraphrasing.
Thank you.
But it's basically saying it has to be a position that was difficult to fill. But if we're taking all of these different things into account, about stepping them and placing them, maybe that's something that needs to be added, or maybe we've been doing things the wrong way in the first place. But I just wanted to be clear because this is my position. I go and I make the offers, I hire people, I give them this, I tell them what they need to do, and it needs to be clearer, in my opinion, because the way that it's written right now, it looks like it's only these circumstances, but when I come to these meetings, it's not.
Thank you very much, Malika. Appreciate
Okay.
your comment.
Thank you.
We have Rhonda Cervantes, who would like to make a comment.
Oh, hi, thank you. So I also work in HR, and I'm just noticing some concerns I have with the equity application of the advanced step placement. Few things. If a person, say it's a position in which there are a few different vacancies, one person feels the confidence to request a step advance, and in that same recruitment, you may have somebody else who's placed who has equivalent experience, but doesn't feel the confidence to bring that forward. So in order to say that it's equitable, I think if the position is determined to be hard to fill and it meets that criteria, that we could look at the experience and education of the person that we're hiring and predetermine their salary placement so that it's not on the employee to do that. And in essence, that would actually further the recruitment aspect, because otherwise we're looking at it as a retention aspect more than a recruitment aspect, because they've already accepted the job.
Right, thank you. Appreciate that comment. And that's certainly both what you have just said and what Malika have said, I think will be taken very much into consideration when we revise the rules and also when we're applying these criteria. Okay, this was a discussion item. I don't think there's any action that we can take or need to take. So we will move on to which of course is a good segue, conference item 8A, which is a step advance request for our Iniguez.
Thank you. And I should note, this is continued from our last meeting. So to continue from the last meeting, I did apply the specific criteria that we just went over. I mentioned that although it does not qualify as a high need recruitment area currently, we have had issues keeping someone in that position. I was able to recommend, based on the criteria regarding the education, a step 2, but not more than that. Miss Iniwa's request was to be placed at step 4, but I'm recommending a step 2 based on our criteria. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Let's see, is Ms. Iniguez on Zoom and would like to make a comment? I'm not entirely sure. Doesn't look like anyone. If you're there, you can go ahead and raise your virtual hand and I'll call upon you, but I don't see anyone. Okay, comments then from our commissioners. Who would like to go first?
I'll go first. So given the fact that our director has actually put together a rubric that is as transparent as we can expect and we can ask for at this time, I am inclined to concur with his recommendation. I do want to note that I have some suggestions, and I think the rubric itself needs further discussion. But since we have one in front of us, we need to use what we have in front of us, given by our director. So I am inclined to support his recommendation.
Ms. Goldstein?
I thought I might use this one as an opportunity to make the case that not all fractional assignments should be counted. I worked from the resume that was included in the package, and there were 4 possible bits of experience that looked like they could apply here. One of them was 2 months working as an HR coordinator, and this is not to belittle the work, but in truth, to actually learn a position and produce in it, you're probably looking at 4 months. And it's why a lot of organizations actually will discount fractional work of 6 months or less, simply because, to be productive and to really learn the role and produce in the role takes time. For this particular candidate, I saw 4 bits that looked like they might apply, and working backwards, the question would be with the Los Angeles County College District, there was 9 months as a program tech. There was 1 year and 7 months as an office assistant. Then there were 5 months working as an executive assistant at Weldon, and then there were 2 months of HR coordinator. So I think what I'd like to understand is, what credit did you give for experience here, and what credit did you give for education here, based on your rubric?
I didn't see the experience fitting as well as you had described, and that, again, that you make the final recommendation, but I recommended the step 2 based on the education, which is not required for but for me, I felt it wasn't a very clear fit in terms of experience. But that's why I only want to recommend what I feel strongly about. If that makes
Got
sense.
it. Okay. So, in looking at the resume, clearly this is someone who had work experience, but you didn't feel like it was relevant enough to our job to apply it.
That's my opinion.
Okay. No, that's all right. That's why you're in the role. Okay.
Well, I'll make my comment, which is reluctantly, I do have a problem with this as a threshold matter, which is that from our executive director, it says, I do not believe the school administrative assistant 2 qualifies as a high need recruitment area currently. I personally, and this is why, there's a little bit of discretion that goes into this. I view that as the most important thing. It's a non-starter if there isn't a high recruitment need. I think that the retention aspect maybe can be looked at to sort of buttress a situation where you're not 100% sure if it's high recruitment need or not high recruitment need. And I'm doing this from recollection, and so therefore others may have a better recollection. My recollection is we've had a few administrative 2 recruitments, and we've had a lot of applicants, and we've had pretty robust eligibility lists. So I have to fall on the side of reluctantly. I think this is a marvelous candidate and a marvelous applicant and will make a great employee, but I'm not sure it fits the criteria.
Do you mind expanding a little bit more on how you saw this as a difficult recruitment?
It falls on the ability to backfill. It's more of a retention. I agree, and I say there in my comments that it's on the surface, it's not a difficult recruitment. But if she was to leave tomorrow, hopefully she doesn't, but it's proving to be a little bit difficult to fill those positions. So it's one of those weird situations where on the surface, if you look at the applicant pool, I can't decidedly say that, well, this is a difficult recruitment. But what I can say is if they're not as easy to fill. We're getting folks to interview, but they're not always taking the jobs. And this one definitely falls in that category. She also is bilingual, so it's even, not that it's required for the job, but it's another added skill that we definitely want to retain in the district. So that's.
Okay, is there a motion on this item?
I think I'm inclined to motion that we go ahead and accept this, this recommendation. In part because we're going to discuss the rubric more. And although the merit rules talk about recruitment, the larger merit gestalt mission is to recruit and retain the best possible talent. So, this is spoken to a little bit when we talk about high velocity recruitments. I forget the words that were used here, high turnover. So, I think that this does cross that threshold. I will defer to our executive director's determination about whether the professional experience was relevant enough to include here. So I would propose that we accept the executive director's recommendation.
Is there a second?
Yeah, I'd have to concur. I will second that as well and defer to our director's discretion. With the statement, we do need more discussion about the rubric.
Mr. Secretary, could you call the roll on the vote, please?
Commissioner Goldstein,
Aye.
Vice Chairperson Carter,
Aye.
Chairperson Roder.
Abstain. So the step advance placement for Reina Iniguez is approved on a vote of 2-0 and 1 abstention. And she will be placed at step 2. Okay. We next have item 9B, which is a step advance request for I apologize for mispronouncing the name in advance, Auelia.
Pretty good.
Close.
Yeah.
Mr. Castillo, can you present this?
Thank you. So this is, before I get into the recommendation itself, this is where I'm glad there's more discussion on the rubric, because there are no hard and fast rules on any of these, because they change. So for example, for the human resources position, we had a decent recruitment about a year ago. We hired someone and they quit after 2 weeks. Then we had another recruitment. We used the list and the person was offered the job and they didn't take it. And now we have someone who did take it and is doing really well in the position. So I would consider that a recruitment need, even though the numbers may not reflect it. Ms. Aola has the bachelor's degree in psychology. This is beyond the minimum qualifications for the HR tech position. She has 3 years of HR experience. Again, as I note in my recommendation, although we had a good number of applicants, the position required 2 recruitments, as the first person quit and the other person didn't even take the job. So there are different versions of recruitment, difficulty in recruitment, and this is one that's rather unique. So just so I'm clear in terms of the steps and the calculation, because I did not write up how I count them, but it was brought to my attention earlier today by someone on my team. So I actually don't count step 1. And the reason I don't count step 1 is because everyone is already at step 1. So I don't consider that an advancement. So I only start the advancement at step 2. So if I'm advancing one step, that's step two, not step one. I just wanted to clarify because it was brought to my attention that I have not made that clear. So in terms of the steps, I would recommend the step two for the advanced degree. And then there are 3 years of HR experience, which then says step three, step four, step five. That's 3 years. So that's why I'm recommending a step five at range 48. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I think Ms. Awula has her hand up on our Zoom connection. So you are recognized. Please go ahead.
Good evening, esteemed members of the Personnel Commission. My name is Amber Lynn Awalua. Unfortunately, I cannot be present in person as I am currently recovering from COVID. I apologize for any inconvenience this may cause, and I appreciate your understanding. I'm extremely grateful for the opportunity to address you today regarding my request for a step advancement as an HR technician here at BUSD. With 3 years of dedicated experience in HR, coupled with a bachelor's degree in psychology, I have been able to quickly acclimate to the challenges and responsibilities here at BUSD. This foundation has empowered me to assume ownership of critical HR tasks since my arrival, contributing effectively to the department's objectives. In addition to my professional experience, I am on the verge of completing my applications for a master's degree in HR management. This advanced education will deepen my knowledge and skills, enabling me better to support BUSD in achieving its HR goals. I sincerely value the time you have dedicated to considering my request. I'm eager for the opportunity to continue making positive contributions to the BUSD HR department, and I hold your deliberation on this matter in high regard. Thank you once again for your attention and consideration.
Thank you very much, Ms. Awulua. Very sorry for mispronouncing your name. Comments from our commission members? Well, I'll start out if you don't mind. I'll make a comment. One is I totally agree that this applicant, Ms. Awula, is tremendously well qualified and has so much positive to bring to BUSD, and I, for one, look forward, welcome her to the district, and look forward to her having a very long and distinguished career with our district. I also think that this is a difficult to recruit for position, so I'm in agreement. I wanted to make one comment. I don't think it actually matters in this particular case, but I was going to make it before, and that has to do with minimum qualifications, and both for education and experience. Sort of strikes me that if it's clear that it's a difficult to recruit for position, then including in the evaluation of what step it should be, the person should go to, even degrees and experience that are within the minimum qualifications should rightfully be included, because what we're trying to do is recruit for this position. And so just because we might require a BA and the person has a BA, that's fantastic. I think taking that into consideration is perfectly appropriate. And that's my comment there. So I'm totally in favor of this step advance. Mr. Carter, I think you're next.
Okay, so I am, she is extremely qualified, and I appreciate her bringing her talents to the district. I'm reluctant to see anyone start at step 5. There is an unspoken acknowledgement or comment that we're making, bringing someone in at step 5 by saying you are as qualified and as efficient as someone who has been here for plus some odd years, who work to get to step 5. So this, this request, I am going to support this request, by the way, because it fits the rubric that our director has put together for us, and I'm going to support that. But I need to make sure my concerns are heard when I say I'm reluctant to see someone walk in the door at step 5. What that tells me is maybe this isn't the position for her. Maybe she's more qualified elsewhere. Not that I want you to leave. That's not what I'm saying. But if they're disqualified without having to do the same amount of work and put in the same amount of commitment to our district, should they be in a different position, garnering this type of income? But that's my comment.
Thank you. Ms. Goldstein.
Maybe I'll riff off of that comment. We have opened the positions we have open. So sometimes people come in at a position where they are extremely well qualified, certainly on paper. They don't quite necessarily know the operations of the district, although in this particular case, it looks like she has worked at the district. Do I remember this one correctly? She's worked at our district
Yeah, since April.
since April.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So, all right, now I'm thinking of somebody else. What something like this tells you is when you put someone in at step 5, it tells you they want to move when that next more advanced position becomes available for them because there's nowhere to go, right? So when you make a decision to bring someone in at step 5, what you're tacitly saying is, I understand you'll stay for a year, maybe 2, just because year over year, salary increases, will bump up a little bit. But, you're not going to stay in this role. You understand that and we understand that. And that's okay sometimes. There's a lot that can change in a year. And we may know that if we find ourselves doing it all the time, what it tells us maybe is we've got a salary scale issue, that we need to look at. But that's just the comment here. I do have one question about the experience, and I'm assuming that our executive director checked this out. Camp Unity experience looked like 2 years worth of experience, but when I see camp, I tend to think of over the summer. Do we know this was full year's experience?
Is that the AmeriCorps one?
No.
Sorry, let me bring it up.
All
again,
right, yeah,
sorry.
hang on. This is the one. HR coordinator, recruiting coordinator, Camp Unity, Dublin, or Daly City.
Mhm. I believe it's related to HR. I do.
And the question was not related to HR. The question
sorry.
was, was it full years or was it summers only over the course of?
I believe it was summers only. Yeah.
It was summers only.
Mm.
All right. So if it was
Okay.
summers only, and maybe you want,
Oh, she's raising her hand.
oh, okay.
Yeah, she has Ms. Aulick, go ahead and if you can answer this question.
Yeah, hi. So it wasn't just over the summer. I should have probably edited my resume, but it's under the big nonprofit PICP, where I handled HR work for them over the course of those 2 years.
Got it. So it was continuous employment. I'm asking. It was continuous employment? The
Yes, correct.
Okay, the Camp Unity. Okay, thank you. Appreciate that. In which case, I understand the step 5 placement. I would support.
You support it. Okay. Ms. Upshur, I, in the interest of time, I think we're going to have to move on and close our discussion on this and move on to the next subject after we have a motion. I'm sorry. Is there a motion on this
I motion to approve
at step 5?
at step 5.
Okay.
And
Sure.
I'll second.
It's moved and seconded, and I agree. And therefore, it's unanimous that Ms. Aula will be placed at step 5 as an advanced step placement. Thank you very much. Okay, we are now on item 8C, which is our 2024-2025 Personnel Commission meeting schedule. Mr. Castillo.
Thank you, Chairman Roder. Um, in terms of scheduling, what, if you go to, it is page 27 and 25, 26, 27. So in reference to that, if you'll look, we don't have any disputing dates for us on Mondays, which is why I was proposing possibly Mondays for the boardroom. Wednesdays, if you'll note, in October, November, we have, you know, some issues there. We also have some unpredictability when it comes to the spring, because as you might remember, in the spring, we were bumped by the board because of their special meetings. So in an effort to just, in an effort of consistency and just to make sure we have the room available to us, I'm recommending the Monday proposal. But it's all there for you to review and ask us any questions regarding the dates for 24, 25.
Okay, thank you. I'll just start off real quick. And I'm sure all of us probably have some conflicts on some of those dates, perhaps not. You know, I have a couple. I know for the month of August, I personally am not going to be available in person. I'm hoping that I'll be able to virtually attend whatever August meeting there is. And I don't really have a preference. Whatever the two of you would like to do as far as Monday or Wednesday is really entirely up to you.
For me, Monday is a crapshoot as far as my my professional life goes. So it could be an easy day or it could be a 9 o'clock day for me.
Okay.
So Mondays are would be a terrible day to choose to put on the
Okay.
calendar.
Okay.
I think I also favor Wednesdays. On Mondays, you know, what I'm noting is the November date falls during Thanksgiving week. I forget if BUSD does a whole week, break week.
I
No?
think so.
Okay. And is the January Monday 127, isn't that generally a holiday also, or is that just a non-student day? January 27. It's a PR, it's a non-student day. Okay. I have a preference on Wednesday for lots of other reasons, also personal reasons. I'm just trained to save Wednesdays, and that's what I do when I've scheduled things in the future that have me out of town on Monday. So I would go for the Wednesday and just take our chances on, when the board sets its schedule. If we have to punt, we can figure it out then.
Yeah.
And that's fine with me. We do have, excuse me, Mr. Castillo, we do have two dates, the October and the November. We have to make a little bit of a decision about, is October 23rd. I see October 28th is a Monday. October 23rd is, what day of the week is that?
It's a Wednesday.
That is a Wednesday. So if we're going with the Wednesday schedule, we'd be going with the October 23rd date, right?
Mhm.
Okay. But November 22nd, I guess that's because of Thanksgiving. November 22nd is a Friday and November 25th is a Monday. So we have to choose between a Friday or a Monday.
I can go either way. I'm fine with Friday. That's
Friday.
what this group wants to do.
So
Friday.
Friday, the
Yeah.
22nd.
Mhm.
Okay. And all the other dates, which I think are Wednesdays, I am probably not going to be available September 25th, but as I say, I think it's quite possible that all of us will have some conflicts here and there. It's kind of inevitable. Okay, do we want to make a motion then? This would be the schedule on page 27, which I think is the Wednesday schedule. Correct me if I'm wrong. Am I wrong?
No, you're not wrong. I just wanted to, before the
Sure.
vote, if I may, Chairman Roder, there is going to be very limited availability for the rooms if we are bumped, because we used to have the ability to take for special meetings, for example, room 126, but because of the red tag and because there's going to be classrooms in that room, we're going to lose some of that availability. So I only say that with some caution because it may be that I don't want us in a situation where we've can't have a meeting that month because of the availability. So we are going to be looking at very limited availability moving forward for this year. So I just want that kept in mind so that we have some flexibility, but we won't have the options we usually do, is what I'm trying to say. So
I think we understand, but it sounds like we're going to have even more limited commissioner availability if we choose Mondays. So we're just going to have to, put on our thinking caps and find alternative locations if we get bumped. Yeah. Okay, well, then I would make the motion that we adopt the schedule that's on page 27, which is the Wednesday schedule, with using the October 23rd date and the November 22nd date.
I'll second.
Been moved and seconded
I agree.
and agreed by Mr. Carter, so that passes unanimously. Thank you. Let's see, where are we? Okay, we're on 8D, which is a request. Let me just look at the time briefly. It's 5:42. We started at 4:30. We'll go with this item and then we'll take a very brief adjournment for 5 or 10 minutes at most, and then continue on. So 8D is a request for a bilingual instructional assistant at Sylvia Mendez Elementary, which is attachment D. And Mr. Castillo, would you present this one?
yes, thank you. Well, this is an example of 3 years on the job and I'm still trying to learn some of these precedents that we set. I know that in discussion with Chairman Roder, we believed that once the board had designated a school bilingual, we wouldn't be here. However, so oh, it's okay. I was reminded of our merit rule 3200.8. Positions requiring multiple language. When a vacancy occurs in a position has approved language requirement, the board will notify the commission the need. So I think as a past practice and at least a point of discussion, if you do want to change the process, I still wanted to make it's all right. I still wanted to make the recommendation for the IA bilingual at the current salary range and the bilingual pay, which is part of the BCCE CBA. Thank you.
Well, I'll make a comment since I brought this up to Mr. Castillo. I don't have it right in front of me, but the job description specifically for under minimum requirements for this specific position says that certain positions may require a bilingual ability. That's a paraphrase, but that's basically what it says. And we had a situation in the past where it was pointed out to us, again, I think just before you're rejoining the commission, Mr. Carter, where at Sylvia Mendez, they needed an employee who was bilingual, and we did go through that particular merit rule, and the board did in fact, I believe under consent, the board did in fact designate that Sylvia Mendez employees needed to be bilingual because it's a dual immersion program. So my feeling is that we've taken all the steps that are necessary for a bilingual what is this position, instructional assistant to be hired. It is not our role, as I see it, to designate 0.4 FTE or any other FTE or how many bilingual instructional assistants would be hired. That's for the district to determine along with the principal. But if it's felt by the commissioners that we need to approve this, then we can approve it.
Just so I'm clear, on what you're saying, I think we can support that, we agree that staff at Sylvia Mendez should be bilingual and, as positions trade out, we support that. I don't think we have any say in whether folks get the additional pay for being bilingual until the board specifies that it attaches to a position a bilingual requirement. So I think if we support it, we are saying we support it, but there's nothing about the pay that, and I see here in the recommendation, plus the bilingual pay part, I don't think we have that authority. So I think, if we're supporting it, we're just supporting it. We could put a referral to the board and ask them to attach bilingual pay that we think it's a good idea, but I don't think we can do that. We can't specify the pay.
So just for clarity for me, because I was curious as to why this was even on our agenda. I'm assuming the current position is not bilingual. The current job description, but Chairman Rhodey just said it was. So is the current job description not required for a bilingual?
This position is bilingual, but just to note, not all the positions at Sylvia Mendez are bilingual. This one happens to be. So, I mean, again, I brought it forward because of the merit language and because I was in consulting with the union, they believe it was a past practice that the commission should approve. But again, I take direction from you. If you don't think we should bring it forward again, that's fine. But yeah, this position is an IA bilingual, correct? Go ahead.
Go ahead, Aaron.
So this is a new position, so it went to the board as a new position, and so I believe that the Personnel Commission has made decisions about whether any position would be considered bilingual because it can affect the way that we recruit, and it can also affect the order of the eligibility list. If it does become a bilingual position, we can pull candidates that are bilingual from an eligibility list, an existing list that are bilingual. So I believe that's why these positions have always gone to the Personnel Commission for approval. And like Charlie mentioned, yes, the Sylvia Mendez positions tend to be bilingual, but not all of them need to be bilingual. That's kind of case by case basis. There might not always be a need for a bilingual employee, even if they do work at Sylvia Mendez.
Aaron, I'll call on you, Frank, in just 1 second. So let me make sure I understand. This is a new position. And then is it correct that the Board of Education has approved this new position and has designated it as bilingual?
Yes, that's correct.
Both of those things are correct.
Yes, that
Okay,
just
thank you.
happened.
Frank, did you have a explanation?
That was my question. Is this a new position or are they using a current position and trying to make it bilingual? Or are they take from Sylvia Mendez? Or are they going to take a current position from somewhere else and bring it into Sylvia Mendez?
So it's a brand new position, and it's an existing class. It's an IA, but it's a brand new position.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, thank you. So I don't have I agree with the two of you. I don't have a problem with supporting this.
So if it's a brand new position, where are the minimum qualifications? Shouldn't
It's not a new job description. It's just a new position.
same job description, same minimum quals as other IAs?
I
except for
assume that's
the-
right, as an IA. it's just the bilingual is tacked on.
Yeah, Vice Chair Carter, it's not new to the extent that it's new to the district. It's just new to Sylvia Mendez, like the job already exists.
Okay, do we have a motion on this item?
Yeah, if it's been past practice for us to approve these, then I motion to approve.
Can I make a friendly amendment that what we motion is to support, this position be filled by someone bilingual? It sounds like it is, I don't think there's anything here for us to approve.
Well, that was kind of my point, but
Yeah, so, can we just say, we support that, positions at Mendez are bilingual and.
well, that's not necessarily the case. I mean, because I'm hearing that not all positions are bilingual. So it's basically, we would be supporting this position. Basically, we support the what the Board of Education has done, which is to create a new 0.4 FTE bilingual instructional assistant position at Sylvia Mendez.
I like it. I think we should say we support that.
Okay, maybe before we, if we're making a mistake here, I think we want to know.
So we signed an MOU on this, and I'm not sure, I don't have the MOU in front of me. This was last year, I believe. I think it's coming here because it needs to be said that's bilingual. It needs to be approved as bilingual, so they could get paid the stipend for the bilingual.
Right.
I'm looking at Aaron
So, so I think we had a similar situation with, for example, other Sylvia Mendez positions that have come to the PC to be designated as bilingual. So the position is open by the board, but for it to be designated as bilingual, because then that will affect our recruitment. And yes, they do get an additional stipend. However, other employees that are not bilingual, but that use bilingual skills can also get that stipend. So it's not necessary for the stipend. But as far as the PC role, the PC has always approved when a position is to be designated as a bilingual position, because then that will affect the recruitment that goes, like for in this case, I will have to recruit now for an IA bilingual list, to establish an IA bilingual list.
And just to confirm once again, Aaron, that the Board of Education has already designated this new position to be bilingual.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And if the minutes could reflect that fact, I would
Yes.
appreciate it. Yeah, I think I think it would be fine for us to approve the board's determination that a new instructional assistant position be designated as bilingual at Sylvia Mendez.
Actually, I think based on what I just heard, what we're voting on is we are saying we are authorizing a bilingual recruitment because what you just said, the
And
board
that's-
approved a bilingual.
That's
Position.
that's totally fine. I
Yeah.
agree with that.
Yeah, I concur.
All right, so what I'm moving is that we are, in consistent with the position that the board approved, we're authorizing a bilingual recruitment for this new IA position at Mendez.
I think I just should say, I think we want to all reflect it in the minutes that our approval is narrow and limited to mirror what the school board has approved.
Agreed, because that's actually a requirement of the merit rules, is that the board have to have first designated the position as bilingual, and then we can approve it, basically go along with it. Okay,
Well, we approve that, because they designated it, we're doing a bilingual recruitment.
exactly.
So
So Sarah, do you, after all of this colloquy, do you have a general idea of what we're approving? Okay, All right, and we'll all read the minutes, the draft minutes, and make sure they're appropriate for us. Okay, so I think Commissioner Goldstein, did you?
I
make
think it
that
was an
motion?
amendment to Commissioner Carter's. I don't know who gets it as the first motion. I'll take it.
How
or
about
you
we
can
give
have
it to you?
Okay.
Okay, so you have made that motion.
I second.
In a second, and I agree, and that passes unanimously.
All right.
And we'll take a 5-minute break, please. Continue, Sarah? Yes, okay. All right, Secretary Castillo, would you like to present this item, please?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. So just a little background. As you all know, it's been close to 10 months since the Director of Human Resources, Glenda Scott Rios, had resigned. And since then, the district had, it's my understanding, 2 recruitments that did not succeed in hiring someone. So I worked with the district on a proposed Director of Human Resources who was not a certificated person, because the only obstacle at this point was that it was becoming very challenging, bless you, it was becoming very challenging to hire someone who was a former teacher or a former principal who also had HR experience. That just makes it even more difficult to hire for. So I recommended to the district that you don't have to be a principal or a former teacher to understand the HR aspects of that role. So I think they concurred. The board recently approved the essential functions of the position. I can go through it, but the one thing I would want to point out are a couple things. One is the distinguishing characteristics. I wanted to make sure that since this person was working with classified, and I also work with classified, that in my role as a single hatter, there was no termination or hiring on my part, but this person can. So although we're working with the same group of employees, I wanted to make sure that there was a paragraph that spoke to their duties versus mine, because that has come up from time to time where I have a principal asking me to do an EEO or something. So I wanted to make sure that that was a distinguishing characteristic for anyone who wanted to understand the difference between my position and that position. I did do the survey. Thank you, Commissioner Goldstein. I now do this every time we do a new position. I think it's a great exercise to do. We do have, in my research, we do have a existing range 85. The existing range in this position is comparable to some of these other positions. The top position, if you'll notice, the BUSD certificated, that was the previous position that Glenda Lee held, and that was the range there. I did try to do San Lorenzo, San Jose, Alameda. I tried to keep it local. Our range is not the highest. I wouldn't say it's the lowest, but it's definitely an existing range within our classification system currently. And I did confer with Samantha Tobias Espinosa, our Assistant Superintendent of HR on this matter, and she concurred that 85 would be okay with her as well. So with that, that's my recommendation, and let me know if you have any questions. Thank you.
I have one quick question, just following up on what you just said, Secretary Castillo. Other directors in, not necessarily executive directors, but other directors in the district, are they at range 85 or are they at other ranges?
Yes, so the only two executive directors are myself and Emily, and we're at 89. The other directors, not executive directors, but the other directors, there are 3 other directors at range 85. One of them is the technology. I'd have to check to see who the other 2 are, but those are director level.
And are there any directors that are at a different range besides 85?
A lower range. 85 is the highest before you get to 89. So we have a range 85 and then we have a range 89, and that's what exists. It's not to say that we can't propose a new range, but I just used the existing ranges that we have.
But are
right
you
now.
saying we have directors in the district that are at a range lower than range 85?
I believe we do. I can give you that number right now. We have 3 that are at range 85. Let me double check to see how many we have at the lower range. Just give me 1 second.
Because, one of the responsibilities of the Personnel Commission is to properly place the position within the relative ranges that exist in the district. And so I want to be sure we're placing it correctly. Any other comments?
I have several, so
Yes, please
maybe
go ahead.
if Vice Chair Carter wants to ask his questions first, I'm sure I'll have more than you will.
Yes. Oh, is the district eliminating a certificated position in place of this one?
I believe so. This position, it's my understanding, this position is replacing the certificated director of HR. So now it will be a director of human resources that's not certificated.
And what range is that position?
That one it's on this sheet here. It's the top one. It's the one that says, hold on 1 sec. It is the one that says BUSD certificated. It's the top one. That's the old range, 160 to 180.
Is there a reason for the difference? Are the duties going to be different for the classified position versus the certificated?
The duties are very, very, very similar. I think the only difference is that the certificated director had a credential, either an administrative credential or a teaching credential, usually an administrative credential, which is just more education. So no, there's no.
What range would that fall in? Would that be 89?
No, 89 is not an exact match, but it's closer to 89. So that range, 160 to 180, it does not exist in the classified range as of yet. But it is. Can I answer the first question and then I'll do that one? Yeah, let me just do both. Give me 1 sec.
I'll just jump in while he's doing that clarification, which is that because this has become a classified position, doesn't mean that a certificated employee, either promotional or outside, can't apply for it and receive it. You can have a certificate, it's just not required.
I think also something I'll just add while we're killing time is for professional HR work, there are a variety of certifications, junior and senior, California specific and not, that I will comment are far more germane to doing HR work than an administrative credential. So, you all have identified a question that I had as well, which is, why is the certificated version of this role, if it has essentially the same duties, at a lower range? I'll also say that when I do the math on the range 85 that's presented here, it doesn't match to the range I'm seeing up here. Step 1 comes to 135,912 a year for a 12-month position, and step 5 comes to 165,120 annually. So something is off in the way range 85 is either being presented here or the way it's presented in the comps above. I'm not sure which.
So let me answer Chairman Roder's question first. So at range 84, we have 2 directors. We have a director of nutrition services and a director of BSEP. And then, at range 85, we have the director of technology, the director of facilities and maintenance, which now actually is an assistant superintendent. So that position doesn't exist, although I think we're going to be recruiting for that one. That's the one we're recruiting for. Yeah. Okay. So there's no one in that role right now, but just to list again. So at range 85, with this proposed range, there is the director of technology, the director of facilities, maintenance and operations, and the director of family engagement and equity. Oh, it was eliminated. Thank you. Ms. Arinas just reminded me that the director of family engagement and equity has been eliminated. Your questions.
The difference in pay. What range would this fall under? You were looking at 89, but didn't quite fit. Or the certificated, if you were to transfer that to the classified things.
So at range 89, it's just 2 executive directors, and the range for that, I have to do the math, but the step 1 for that, let me tell you the monthly first, and then I'll annualize it. The step 1 range for range 89 is $13,187.07. And step 5 of 89 is $16,018.82.
And could you go into a little bit more explanation as to why the difference? Why the difference if the duties are essentially the same? Why the difference in pay? Is it just well, I'll let you tell me.
I talked to the district, and there's several reasons that they went into, but one of them is that, you have the 89 right now is executive directors, and this is a director position. So I think matter of consistency, I think the district wanted the directors to be in range 85 and the executive directors to be in range 89. That's one reason. The other, I think, is this person is not going to have that additional credential. We are requiring a degree, but we're not requiring the school credential, which again, I think bumps that salary up because it's additional education, it's additional experience. So it is, even though the duties are the same, the requirements are somewhat scaled back from having to have that additional credential.
So didn't you mention earlier that the district was having trouble recruiting for this position at the current range, which is at the higher range, even though they were required to have the HR certificate, they were still having trouble retaining?
Yes. Well, they've been recruiting for 10 months and they haven't been able to find anyone.
So in your opinion, do you think that is because of the certificate or because of the duties? It's truly just your opinion. I get it, but what do you think the barrier is? Is it the pay?
I think it's the
certificate?
credential. That's why I recommended to eliminate the credential to try something. I think that in doing HR for 20 some odd years, you do not have to have a teaching credential to be advising a district on HR matters and taking those on. But districts, by and large, demand that you have that teaching credential. And again, by and large, not all of them. And I think it's a familiarity. I think that principals who used to be former teachers and teachers, they believe that the only way to understand that environment is if you were a teacher. I happen to have been a teacher, so, and I can tell you that I've worked with curators, I've worked with engineers, I've worked with lots of people that I've never had that job, but I was still able to be the HR director. So it's just something that we're trying to help the district. And I thought the only barrier right now has been that teaching credential. Because when we look at the field of HR directors, there are a lot of HR directors out there that have worked for water districts or school districts or counties or cities who would be perfectly fine to do HR here, but they don't have a teaching credential. So it's just a strategic decision to see if we can improve the district's ability to hire someone. May work. I think it will, but it may not, but we'll see.
May I?
Yes, please.
Okay. I'm going to start with a caution. And the caution is in federal law and certainly in California law about equal pay for equal work. Okay, and what I see here worries me because if what you're telling me is the duties for the Director of Human Resources as a certificated position pay a range that is different from the classified position, and the duties are materially identical, this is a problem, number one. Problem number two, I made this comment earlier, I'm not sure you heard it. And I don't see it in the job description, which I think is sort of interesting. We may want to add it to the minimum quals. There are a number of certifications that HR professionals can get, junior and senior, national and California. And they are extremely germane to the work. I would argue more germane than an administrative credential, standing alone. And it should be part of the job description. The third thing I have a question about is I look at the comps and I see the range 143, 583 through 174, 444. So I do the math to try to understand what's the monthly on that. And that math doesn't match what I see in range 85. So my question to you is, which is it? Right now, this range 85 I see in front of me looks too low. Step one, 11,326 for a 12-month position pays 135,912, which is significantly below the 143,583 represented in the comps. And at step five, same problem, 13,760 in a 12-month position pays 165,120, which is also significantly below the 174,444. So if this is what range 85 is correctly represented, I think we need a new range.
I'm double checking, but yes.
Well, while the executive director is doing that, let me just address my feeling about your concern, Commissioner Goldstein, about equal pay for equal work. I think that's true as a general concept, but I do see a big difference between a position that requires at a minimum a certificate and the pay range that requirement would garner versus a equal job duties, but not requiring that additional certification as a teacher, as a teaching credential. I see that as being sufficient basis for us to determine that the classified position could be at a lower pay scale than the certificated position would be.
I think we have a difference of opinion. I think in a challenge, you know, pound for pound, understanding the different dimensions of human resources, I think an admin credential falls short, and I think it could be demonstrated to fall short.
Oh, no, I
I
wasn't.
hope we never get there.
Well, I wasn't referring to that admin part. I was just referring to not requiring the teaching credential.
Same argument for a teaching credential. I don't think that there is much in a teaching credential that is germane to HR work.
Well, that may be, and that's why our executive director has recommended, and the school district has recommended as well, eliminating that requirement. I mean, that makes sense to me too.
Right, no.
Not all that important, but if a prior position had required that, I can see where the requirement of having that, whether it's germane or not, could have garnered more pay.
Chairman Roder, let me ask, if the requirement was for a dental technician credential, you know, and then we changed it, would it matter? Right? My point is that the teaching and the administrative credential is fundamentally useless in the practitioners, you know, the practice of HR. The same way a dental technician credential would be. I hope we never get there, but it's a real concern for me. I think if it were challenged, we might lose that. And that's why I'm concerned that the classified version of this, which certainly could require a PHR, a California PHR, or a senior California PHR credential. If it's fundamentally the same work, it should be fundamentally the pay that I think was provided to the certificated role.
Yeah, you're right.
just-
We have
idea.
a difference of opinion. And as
Yeah.
to that second point, which is the additional certifications,
Mhm.
I agree. They would be very, very helpful. The problem that I have always with requiring additional certifications is that going to be a barrier to recruitment? In other words, what we're doing is just, again, it's the floor. If someone comes in with those additional certifications, they would probably be even more qualified to receive the job than somebody who didn't have those certifications. But I have a little bit of a problem, I think, with actually requiring them.
Well, it's hard to have the cake and eat it too in this one. If the way the role originally existed was have a certification that isn't especially germane to the work you're doing. I think the range is paying for the work that you're doing. If we want to reduce barriers to entry, I'm 100% for that. And we're doing the same work. And if we're doing that same work and we're reducing the barrier to entry, compared to a position where the credential really didn't have a material impact on your ability to do the work. And, that's the crux of the argument. You may disagree with me.
Well, all I would say is somebody at some point thought that having a teaching certificate was germane to the work, because that was the job description back when it was.
Well, I think it's a bias in educational institutions for sure.
Okay.
I don't know if you need a teaching certificate to do maintenance and facilities
Right.
work. Probably not. I would argue it is just about as helpful in maintenance and facilities as it is in HR. But I think the real point here, because I think we disagree, is I don't think the range is right. So tell me what you'd like to do.
So I have two things. One is the proposed original salary range is correct, but the salary schedule is incorrect because I did not include the 6% COLA that was attributed to it. So when you add the 6%, which is the more recent one that was just shown to me by Aaron, the last step 5, Heidi, is 14,537. But it still ends at, so just to be clear, the 143,000 to 174, that range is correct. What is incorrect right now is the schedule that I posted here because it's missing the 6%.
Just forgive me. Let me do a
No, it's
little
okay.
math.
And I have a proposal for the
Okay.
commission to consider.
Okay, all right. Got it.
So we have range 85 and then we have range 89. We don't have an 86, an 87, or an 88. Would this body consider, would the commission consider just a range 86 that was 160 to 180?
Sure. I would.
I mean, if that's where we're landing and I'm hearing my commissioners, I think that's what I would propose is we would make a range 86 that would be reflective to Commissioner Carter's earlier point. It would be reflected at the BUSD certificated salary range of 160 to 180.
Yeah, I'd like to see that proposal. For slightly different reason, I have a problem with telling our classified staff, you're gonna do the same work, but we're gonna pay you less now that you're a classified employee. And so I would definitely like to see the range the same as a certificated, because they're doing the same work. There's no way to move around doing the same work. You have to,
Mhm.
whether you're certificated or not.
Are we ready for a motion?
I'd like the director to clarify the proposal because that's not what's in front of us on paper.
No, it's not. And again, sorry, Vice Chair Carter, from time to time, I'll present this and then after we're discussing it, I'll propose again. So my proposal now in amending my initial recommendation would be a range 86 at 160,300 to 180,014, which would be exactly what the range was for the person in the position previously.
I agree with that.
So is that something, do one of us have to move
Hmm.
the thing? Okay,
One of you.
all right.
Yeah, I would think so. I don't know. I've never been involved in creating new ranges. Maybe the two of you have. Are there any steps that we have to
Oh,
take?
sure. It has to be negotiated with the union.
Well, yeah, I'm sure.
But they're not.
Well,
This
the
is an
union-
unrepresented.
This is an-
Oh, it's an
unrepresented.
unrepresented
Yeah.
position, correct?
We have,
Okay.
I double checked. We have the authority because it's unrepresented to propose, and it is again within our authority because we are proposing a new job. This is a new job to the district, attributing the salary and the minimum qualifications. Those fall under our authority.
Right. Okay.
I move we approve.
You move what he said?
And-
Right, I think,
Right, the revised proposal by our director.
This is to create
This-
a new range 86, which would be between 160,300 at step 1 and 180,014 at step 5. And the steps 2, 3, and 4 would be determined accordingly, and the monthly would be 1/12 of each
Right.
of each of those. Okay.
All right, so I think you just moved it, or
Nah,
who gets it? Carter gets it?
I'm just
Okay.
going along.
So, and again, forgive, we're trying to, I feel like we're changing the tire on a car while it's moving. Aaron just brought to my attention that it's not for the public, but there are ranges that exist within Pauline's shop. So I will find the actual range that matches the 160 to 180. We do that?
Matching range.
Yeah, because there's one that,
Okay.
there is one that exists. It's just not published because it's not being used.
Yes, Aaron.
Yeah, so there is a schedule where this class would pertain to, which is Schedule 52. And so there are going to be ranges on that schedule. And like Charlie said, he wasn't able to see it because they're not published since they're not used currently right now, the ranges that fall in between. But I do believe that that there is a schedule and that we could closely match the salary to that schedule. I know, I know Malika is raising her hand and she's the payroll expert. She might be able to just know at the top, like what that range would be, just so that we could have an accurate number.
Okay, maybe it would be appropriate to hear both from Malika and from Denise Diggs Ray, who also has her hand up. So let's start with Malika, please.
Hey, hi everyone. Yes, thank you for answering my hand. But yeah, I was trying to chime in about the discussion because that is part of my knowledge. There are other steps that do align well, and I did have the same concerns as Miss Heidi did, and so as Mr. Tim did as well. And I feel like there is another step that we could choose to make that align because, sorry, I might be over speaking, but I'm gonna just say what how I feel while I have a moment. But I feel like for that position, it doesn't make sense for us to have the person doing the same exact duties for less money. I agree with Heidi on that. And I agree that there has been an issue with the district being able to find somebody that's credentialed to meet those duties. And if we find somebody that is not credentialed, then we should pay them consistently with the past position was held and was paid. And it also didn't make sense to me why the other districts, we had, I think it was 4 other districts that were put in there, and they had different rates on their scale where they started and ended, and ours is lower. So it doesn't make us competitive at all, in my opinion. And that was like one of my biggest complaints. I work in HR and I pick up on a lot of work, and I have taken upon a lot of work, and just to be supportive of amongst my department to make sure that we are able to get somebody in that can contribute and has the knowledge and is able to do their due diligence within our department. And I feel like it's going to be way harder for us to find somebody with less money for the same duties, whether they're classified or certificate. And that's just my personal opinion. But I can definitely share with you all, I'll send you all a separate email, let you know what step and range that that's equal to that position, which I feel like, and I'll give y'all a couple of different opinions and options to choose from. But I feel like starting them off at a step range and lower is not going to get us what we need.
Okay, thank you very much, Malika. Denise Diggs Ray, do you want to go ahead?
Yes, thank you. I wanted to ask the question because in the job description, it talks about this director planning professional development for certificated and classified. And from my understanding, there's 2 individuals, certificated and classified professional development developers. So I'm not understanding why that's in there. And hopefully someone can explain at some point. And then I'm wondering, and I may have missed this, where it talks about the executive director's recommendation. Why is it approving the director of facilities and maintenance at the range that we of 143? Because it looked like this should be referring to the director of human resources.
Okay.
And so the director of human resources will also serve as a resource to principals and hiring managers. And I thought that was part of them being the certificated director. But if they're going to be a classified director, how does this relate to what the executive director, Secretary Castillo, do? I'm not clear on that.
Do you want to
Sure.
try to answer?
I use templates. I have templates for everything that we work on here, and I sometimes forget to erase the one I used before for that title. So that's on me. In regards to the essential duties are decided by the board, not by us. So I can't speak to why they chose that one in particular, but that's what they chose.
Great, thank you.
And
Thank you.
One other question I wanted to ask. So if this person who is going to be the director, my understanding is that two more directors are there, and Charlie, I don't know if you mentioned them, I don't remember hearing them, but it is the director of OFI, who was Matthew, and then the director, and maybe he's an executive director of special ed. Can you clarify that for me, please?
The OFI position has been eliminated. There is an executive director of special education services. That's Mr. Manzinger.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, so what I'm hearing, I think, from both Aaron and confirmed by Malika is that there is a pre-existing range which would maybe correspond closely to, but not necessarily be identical to this 160, 300 to 180, 14. So the question is, are we comfortable in just at this time saying, so that the recruitment can begin, saying that we'll accept the closest range to that previous BUSD certificated director of human resources, or do we somehow need to bring this back? I would hope that we don't need to bring it back. It's already been 10 months. Be nice to start the recruitment. This is a good time to do recruitment probably. So what?
I don't have a problem just
Closest
specifying
to.
closest range.
Yeah, closest range.
And just so you all know, I didn't know that existed. I would have probably proposed that to begin with. But secondly, now I know. But I won't approximate less than 160. I will always approximate up. So in other words, if the closest one is 159, I'll choose the next one that's not.
Got it.
So it'll be exact or a little more, but it won't be less.
Okay, do we have a motion to that effect?
Yes. Should we restate? Okay. All right. So the motion is to ask our executive director to go back and find a range that approximates not less than the range that had applied to this position previously in its certificated manifestation. And to go ahead and apply that to this new classified version of the role.
And also, I would assume to approve the minimum qualifications, education, training, experience,
Thank you
knowledge.
for bringing that up. Can we make that a different motion, actually?
We can.
Let's do that. Can we vote on the first one?
Was that your motion?
That was my motion.
I second.
Okay, and I agree. So that the salary range aspect of this proposal is approved in that manner. Now we're moving on to the minimum qualifications, knowledge, and abilities, which is within the purview of the Personnel Commission.
So what I would suggest here, and I'm open to other thoughts. One doesn't have to have a, PHR or a senior PHR or a California PHR to do this work. But it's good training and it's useful to have. So I don't know if we want to require someone to have it or to get it in the role, once they're in the role. Or just to express a strong desire for candidates who bring that certification.
Yeah, that's a good point. Well, we already say negotiations experience and successful experience in areas of conflict resolution is desirable. And then we say a master's degree is preferred, but not required. We could, and I would look to you, Commissioner Goldstein, for the verbiage, but I would support the idea that the certificates that you just referred to are desirable.
Mhm. So maybe what we could add here is the California PHR or SPHR or similar certification is desirable. There are many acronyms of certification, but this gives a good idea that what we want is someone who understands California law, because we're here in California.
Is that, Mr. Secretary, is that explicit enough? I suppose you could, I mean, those are acronyms. We may not want to actually use the acronyms. We may want to spell it out.
Yeah, I mean, I'm familiar that you can get them through SHRM or you can get them through, so SHRM is a national organization of HR. You can get these certifications. I do think, my own opinion, I think we can make them desired if you want to. I don't know that I would recommend making them do it when they're in the job, because I think,
I'm fine with having them be
Yeah.
desirable. There are
Yeah.
plenty of people out there who practice without them. I would be an example of one of them.
me too. Yeah.
So, okay.
But I appreciate when people do have them. I agree.
Okay.
I think the spirit of what we were trying to do for the district was to put barriers down to make the recruitment a little easier as much as possible. But I think we can add that as a desirable. That's not a big problem. We can
Are
do
you
that.
good with that, Mr. Carter?
I am. I'm gonna have to defer to Commissioner Goldstein's expertise in this area. So
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Okay, you want to present that as a motion? I don't think that's been done
Sure.
yet.
I think what we want to motion is to add under education, training and experience section, a line that indicates a PHR, senior PHR, California or similar certification is desirable.
I second.
Well, or similar.
Similar,
Yeah, it really could be any.
Sorry, we're.
Yeah.
It's lingo, but yeah,
Yeah.
I know exactly what
Right.
he's asking.
Okay, good. I second that.
I concur.
Okay.
Okay.
So that addition to the education, training and experience as being desirable is approved unanimously. Okay, is that all, Mr. Secretary, that you need on this item, do you think?
I think so.
Okay,
I believe I have, and just to make sure as part of the record, I'm going to find the range that most closely approximates to the 160. And I'm going to add the certificates of that Commissioner Goldstein mentioned, the PHR, the senior PHR, the California. There's a list there as desirables in the minimum quals. Thank you.
okay.
Right, in the really in the ed training and experience.
Yeah,
Well, very-
confused, but I consider.
Okay, okay.
Okay, thank you. So now we're on item 8F, which is an agenda item request from Margot Wilson regarding clarification of reclassification and basically the effective date of that. Mr. Castillo, do you want to, it's fairly self-explanatory, but if you want to
It is.
Talk on that.
I could, it's not consistent with the rules, and the rule I cite is Merit Rule 30.300.3, effective date of reclassification, which is also in the Ed Code, section 45285. It reads, classification of a position shall become effective on the same date that the reclassification of the position is approved by the commission.
Okay, thank you. And I see Mr. Hernandez has moved up close to the podium. Did you want to address this?
I would invite Margot Wilson first if she. wants to
Sure,
speak.
is she on? I don't see her name listed. Sarah, do you see her name? Yeah, I don't see her right now, Frank.
Yeah, okay, so, hello, everyone, again. I'm looking at what Charlie just quoted. 30 point, was that 303? And I read it 180, I guess. totally opposite of what he, how he's using it. The reclassification of a position shall become effective on the same date that the reclassification of the position is approved by the commission. That's what it says. What was the date that they reclassified? What was the date that it was effective for the reclassification of those positions? That date was October, I believe, 6, 2022. Margot Wilson came in, if I remember correctly, we had this discussion in the last meeting. It wasn't just for Margot Wilson, it was for all the positions that we've been fighting this for almost 2 years now, but it was for all the positions to be reclassed upward. And those positions, as the board here has approved, you guys approved that the reclassification happened, and it should have been, everybody should have been lifted upward. That happened in October 2022. That didn't happen in our last meeting. It was never stated what was the effective date for Margot Wilson. There's also other classified employees in that same position. I want to say that strongly, position that was that also got lifted up into the new classification. It's not just Margot Wilson. So it wasn't approved at the last meeting for her to get reclassified. It was approved that she would be lifted up, her and the other members or positions, along with the when the reclassification happened. So if you read it, the reclassification of the positions is approved by the commission. That happened in October of 2022. That did not happen in our last meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Hernandez. I think we do understand your position completely. Okay, and I still don't see, no, I don't see Margot Wilson. Comments from commission members? I can make a comment if you want me to go ahead.
No, I'll go ahead.
Go ahead,
Yeah,
Mr. Carter, please.
So the way I understand how this unfolded is the individuals requested a reclass. It wasn't reclassed by the PC. And some of the individuals in this position were approved and some were not for whatever reason, but they weren't approved. And the way I understand it is it wasn't until the district superintendent requested the whole class get reclassed. And that's the date that and that is actually what we approved in our commission meeting, not the individual requests by the employees. That's the way I understood it, which would change the date to the 24th May of this year. That's the way I understand it.
I'm sorry, I didn't quite get the last part. It would change the date.
Well, it would keep the date. It wouldn't
Right.
backdate it. It would keep the date to our
At
last
the May
meeting.
24,
Right.
at our May 24 meeting.
Right.
Yeah, well, I agree with that, the date is the May 24th meeting date, maybe for a slightly different reason. As I view this process is that initially the request was made under B2 300.30 B2. B2 involves situations where some of the positions were being reclassified, but not all the positions were being classified. If you fast forward to the last meeting, yes, the superintendent, the district, changed its position on this. And they now said that all the positions in this classification were doing and were expected to do the additional duties that gave rise initially to the reclassification. That was a change in circumstances. The original circumstance by the supervisor was, no, they're not all doing the same work. They're not in the same positions. But then when the superintendent said they're all doing the same work and they're all in the same positions, then it was controlled by B1 instead of B2, and we determined that they should be reclassified. And I agree with you, Vice Chairman Carter, that that occurred at the May 24th meeting, and under our rules, that's when the new classification would take effect.
And I agree with both of you.
Okay, very briefly,
Yeah,
and I know you disagree, but
You say B1, but it's B2. It's not B1, it's B2. A portion of the positions in the class are reclassified upward. That's what happened. This is, to me, it's so obvious and clear that, you know, me and Mildred and other members, we have been fighting this for over 2 years. The last meeting, and I quote Charlie, he says, I never denied the reclassification of Margot Wilson. He said that. This has been going on. We came here December of 2022, and it was the ongoing process. And it's been almost 2 years to get here. And then think about it. Margot Wilson, we come here and fight for her and for the other members, and it was agreed that she should have been reclassed in October. B2 clearly states that, and it was agreed upon that you guys went with B2. That those positions should have been reclassed along with everybody else. It's the positions of the reclassification. The positions got reclassed. The other positions should have came with them.
yeah, I've set forth my position a number of times, and I do respectfully disagree with your interpretation of B2. I think what happened on May 24th is they got reclassified under B1 because all the positions were now performing and expected to perform the same work. We were now told by the administration, which was a new circumstance. We were not told that previously. So I think we understand. We respectfully have a disagreement on this one point. But I think we're ready to make a motion.
I'll go ahead and make the motion. I motion that we deny this request.
I second that.
Right, or I guess the executive director's recommendation is not to support it, right, to deny the request, right?
Yeah, I second that.
Before we go.
Yeah, we can hear quickly. We're not going to get to the other item.
It was just stated here again, because just a point of clarity of what you just said, and that's fine. No argument, no discussion, but that everybody in that class were reclassed to admin twos because they're all doing the work and so forth. And that's what we were discussing earlier. So therefore, one out of that group cannot be grandfathered in or stay back when everybody was reclassed in that whole group.
Yeah, no, Mildred, you bring up a very important point, which I don't know if it's an administrative one or one, it's different from what we were talking about here. My understanding is that there's a third, let's say, an additional employee with less than 2 years in this position doing the additional work.
So
Our
that's
rule-
not, well, should we tell her to not do the work if she's?
Well,
doing the
no,
work?
our rules state that you have to be, because it's all about gradual accretion. Our rules state you have to be doing that additional work for a minimum of 2 years. I think administratively, the way it was going to be handled, but if there's objection to it, we have to think about it. And that is that when this person does reach that 2-year mark, that person would be immediately reclassified into the higher position. That would fulfill the 2 years as required. And that's, you know, that's what's in the ed code as well. But if the union has a problem with that administrative way of handling it, then I guess it's not that appeal. That issue is not before us, but
Okay.
you do bring it up.
Well, yeah, because I was going by what you just said, like, you know, if that whole class was reclassed, right? That position is not there. You can't, That whole class was reclassed, right?
Eh,
The
but-
district eliminated that position.
But you
So
know about
everyone in
B1.
that group was reclassed. So I was just listening to what you stated, so I was going by what you said,
Understood.
right? So going by what you said, I'm like, okay, well then going off what you said, then that means everybody in that classification are admin twos. So I wouldn't want to say, because if you think about it, that person is doing the work. They're all doing the work. So how do you say that person is doing the work, but they're not getting paid to do that work? And they're all doing it. So now what do we do? Do you know
Right.
what I mean?
I
But we
know
can bring it to
exactly
the
what
next
you mean.
meeting. Okay?
I personally don't have a problem with that, but it's not consistent with our rule as stated.
So we're talking a hypothetical person?
No,
Now-
no, this is an actual.
Like all of these people
There's an
are
actual person.
in, so that's just my concern. And we were just talking about it. Because I did, after speaking with Charlie today, and I was talking to her, about what's a possibility, because we were talking about a pass or fail test and other things. But my thing is, they're doing the work. And I feel, just coming from a union standpoint, if you know that this employee is doing the work the same as all the other people within the same classification, how can you say you're doing the work, but you're not getting paid to do the work? It's just, it doesn't make sense. So that's what I'm not understanding. How do we directly handle a situation like that when the person is actually doing the work?
I think that at another meeting, this is a good thing to discuss.
Yes,
There
ma'am.
are absolutely ways to fix this, either through promotion or retiring an old job description. There are ways to handle this, I think. And out of class pay. Thank you. But right now, for what's in front of us, I think we should hold that other thing.
I said it was fine. I just wanted to make sure I heard correctly, because I wanted to just make sure based off of what was just stated. Thank you for your time.
Got it.
Thank you.
So I queued up a motion. Does anybody want to second it?
I second that.
I concur.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so the request that Ms. Wilson's reclassification be retroactive before May 24th is denied. Okay, now let's see how we're doing for time. It's almost 7 o'clock. I don't know how we're going to get to, well, as a matter of fact, it's almost 7 o'clock. The class and comp study is scheduled to go for 30 minutes. So that's basically would end our agenda and not even have time for an additional public comment. So is that,
Can I motion that we add 10 minutes to our end time? To have an abridged public comment and, just close out the meeting.
I would concur with that. So extending our meeting by an additional 10 minutes to have a 10-minute public comment, and then the remaining items will just have to be taken care of at the earliest meeting we can get to them.
Just a point of clarification, Chairman. So we would be moving, just to clarify,
Yes.
we would be moving 9C and 9D to our next meeting.
To either our next meeting or another meeting, but yes.
I just wanted to clarify.
Next meeting is fine.
Thank you.
Okay, so now we will go on to item 9A. Oh, we should vote on that motion to extend.
Right.
So we'll have a voice vote. Does everybody agree? I agree.
I agree.
I agree.
Okay, so we are extended for an additional 10 minutes. Okay, so now we'll do the class and comp study, phase 3 and phase 4. And we have, I think, a representative from Eric Hall and Associates. And if he could take about 10 minutes for his presentation, and then that'll leave us 20 minutes for discussion and next steps. Mr. Castillo, do you want to move us forward?
I think if it's okay, Chairman, I'm going to relinquish my time
Yes.
to Rick so we can get started right away with your presentation. Rick, do you want to go ahead?
Yes, just sound check. Are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Thank you for the opportunity to present briefly for about 10 minutes or less the general issue of the phases of the project. I thought it might be helpful to review the project as a whole since we've come to the end. And then if there are specific questions about 3 and 4, we would answer them or prepare additional information for your use at another meeting. So if we can have the next slide, please. I want to first of all thank everyone that participated. We really appreciate the opportunity to have been part of this important work for you, for your district. I do hear a little echo. We're not quite ready for the next slide. I want to particularly, if we can, there you go. We do want to acknowledge the diligence and the hard work and the dedicated services, both of your executive director, Mr. Charles Castillo, as well as administrative assistant Sarah Goodman, who's worked diligently to keep this process going. And we also want to thank the Human Resources Administration and staff. We know others have been helping to have this happen. And we also want to thank very much the members of the steering committee who gave generously of their time and whose input and direction, consultation, and advice were so invaluable for the goals and objectives of this process. There were representatives from BCCE, from Local 21, from Confidential Group, and from managers. And it's a big project, and we appreciate all of their efforts and all of the time they spent to help bring this to the conclusion. Next slide, please. So this began in October of 2020, so that was a while ago. That was almost still going on with COVID. And we contracted to do this work for not only the classified employees, which is the bulk of what you have in the bargaining unit, but also for managers and confidentials who are also classified employees. They're just not often realized that just because they're not represented by a bargaining unit doesn't mean they're not part of the purview of the Personnel Commission and its responsibilities for classified employees. So we did job descriptions, and we also did a compensation phase. District assembled the steering committee, which we just mentioned, and the project progressed in 4 phases. Phases 1 through 3, we looked at the job classes and the job descriptions, updated those, and made some recommendations with respect to reclassification or different titles, depending on the data that was there in each phase, and reported in detail per phase. So all 4 phases have been completed, including the last phase, which was compensation. And we have the next slide, please. So in phase 1, we had 42 classes, mostly in the admin, clerical, nutrition, instructional, after-school operation, purchasing. So in those job classes, we took them first. They were all represented, all those classes were represented by the BCCE bargaining unit. And phase 2, which began shortly after phase 1, you can see which jobs we looked at. It was, again, about 50 job classifications, and they were all also represented by BCCE. When we came to phase 3, there were 47 classes. 20 of those classes were represented by a Local 21 unit. 7 were non-represented confidential, and 12 were non-represented management job classes. So we took a look at their job descriptions and presented information. And each phase included, the process in each phase included interviews with incumbents, with supervisors, and an opportunity for incumbents and supervisors to review the drafts. We assume that opportunity was granted, and that was the intention. Next slide, please. So in phase 4, there were 50 benchmark classes that were selected by the steering committee for our organization to go out and survey the market. So 35 of the classes that we were going to survey were represented by BCCE, so from phases 1 and 2. 8 of the classes were from Local 21, a phase 3 set of jobs. 4 were confidential, and 3 were management. Next slide. This is available for you to look at. I'm not going to read them all, but there are the 35 job classes that were surveyed in phase 4 from the BCCE group. Next slide shows the confidential Local 21 and the management jobs that were surveyed. So we gathered salary data for jobs where we could identify. In some cases, there were no matches for the jobs. In other cases, some districts responded, some didn't. There's always some collection issues, but we tried to gather the information and present it to you. And I will talk briefly about phase 4 in a minute, show you a couple of examples. But in phase 4, we did present in that report all the jobs that we were able to find and that we matched, and you can see in detail and fairly transparently how we came to the conclusions that we came to. Let's take a look at the next slide. This slide indicates the districts that the steering committee selected for us to use. So it was Alameda, Castro Valley, Fremont Valley, Hayward, Livermore Valley, Oakland, and Pleasanton. And I believe 3 of those districts are merit system districts, maybe 4, and the others were not merit districts. But they were, except for Oakland, which is much larger, they were mostly of comparable size and composition that would make them reasonable matches for and similar in how they would be structured to Berkeley Unified School District. Next slide, please. Just for information, geographic purposes, you can see where these districts are located. There are red numbers that correspond to the numbers that were in alphabetical order assigned to the district, so you can see where Berkeley is relative to the geography of the other districts that we're compared to. It's just an informational slide, and so we're now at slide number 10, which is a kind of quick summary. We did 50 benchmarks. 45 of those benchmarks, in other words, 90% of the jobs that we were asked to survey, there were enough matches, 3 or more, to form a market to make a comparison. At the bottom, 3 benchmarks had only 2 matches. That's really very weak relationship. And 2 of the benchmarks had 1 or no matches. So 45 jobs we were able to comment on. We did provide the information on the 3 that had only 2 matches. And in the case of the 2, there were no matches. So there was no data to present. Of the 45 benchmarks that had enough matches to form a market, 11 benchmarks, or 22% of those 45, are already being paid above the median of the market for that job. 16 of the 45, or 32% of the overall jobs, are being paid at the median of the market. And what we mean by the median is there's a calculated median based on the responses that we had. Here's the median of those values. If a job is paid less than 5% above that median or less than 5% below the median, that's a flexible range that we're calling that's the median. A job that's paid less than 5% below the median, so it's maybe minus 5 or 7%, minus 8% below the median, those are jobs that are below. If the job is paid 6%, 7%, 8% above the median, that's above the median, and it's calculated accordingly. 3 of the benchmarks had only 2 matches, and 2 of the benchmarks had none. And 18, and this would probably be the jobs that you would want to, the district and the bargaining units would want to look at first. 16% of the jobs, 36% of all the jobs, 18 classes, were found to be below the median. In other words, their pay is lower than 5% below the median value of their market. So that's the quick helicopter view of the results of the Phase 4 survey. Clearly, for bargaining unit positions, there is a process for negotiations. These recommendations and the data inform that process and will help the district and the bargaining units to determine their priorities and how they want to organize and set their priorities to bargain. Excuse me. And that concludes the sort of formal overview that we have. Now, I know you have before you 2 lengthy reports with quite a bit of detail to take a look at. And if you have questions at this point, I think I'll end my presentation. I believe I made it in the 10 minutes, and that leaves you 20 minutes for the remainder of your meeting questions from the commission, or if you're entertaining public comment at the end of the session. But again, thank you for the opportunity to work with you. And you have some great employees. It's our pleasure to have been able to meet with them and work with them over the past couple of years.
Thank you very much, Rick. Thank you for your presentation. And you had 1 minute to spare, and I appreciate that very much.
I yield my time to the commission.
So, as has been said, this is really not, it may be the end of EHA's formal participation, but sort of as I see it, it's the end of the beginning and not at all the end of the end. And there's processes that the Board of Education, the district will have to be involved in. The unions are clearly going to be involved in those processes and negotiations. And I think it's yet to be determined what role, if any, this Personnel Commission is actually gonna take in this process, which may be something the other two commissioners have some thoughts about, and maybe the union and others may have some thoughts about. So we should open it up for questions to Rick, and also next steps. Where do we go from here? Questions for Rick? Let me just ask one question of Rick, just to make sure I'm right. Of the 18 positions that are below the median, that's a combination of BCCE positions, Local 21 positions, possibly even unrepresented positions. Those aren't all BCCE positions, are they?
No, there is a chart in the back of the Phase 4 report. There's several pages of charts that organize that information, and I believe the last of those charts, and they're 4 pages each because of the size of the format. The ones that are below the median are in red, and you can see over on the left-hand column, the very first column indicates whether it's a BCCE, a Local 21, or a confidential or a management position. So you would be able to quickly ascertain which of those groups that particular job class title belongs to.
And then my second, I think, last question to you is, there's been some discussion. We had someone in our public comment make this comment that the question to you is, how did you choose the sort of comparable jobs in the other districts that were comparable matches to the jobs in our district? What is the process that you go through? If 2 or 3 jobs are similar, how do you choose which one you're going to use as the matching position?
So what we would do in that process is we are going to go and identify jobs that look like they might be similar. Title is one way to start, but that's far from sufficient. So we would pull up job descriptions. If we can't find anything, we would actually call a district and ask, say, this is what we're looking for. Do you have a similar job? And give us, if we can't find the job description at their website, which most districts now have them at their website, we would ask to have a copy sent to us so that we could do a side-by-side comparison between what we think is probably the job and is that job description sufficiently similar, somewhere in the probably 70 to 85% similar range. No jobs are going to be identical, of course, but close. It's going to be close enough to say that's a reasonable match. The salary that's being paid for this, for what is essentially 80%, 70 to 80% of what is being done for that work in Berkeley, this is what that district is paying. That will be the match that we will make. And we matched, we took step 1, we took the top step for that district, and then we calculated what's the halfway point between those 2 values. That was what we would call the mid-range. That's a process by comparing at the mid-range where we even out some of the issues like, well, one district has 8 steps and another has 7 and some have 5. So there are different amounts. And I believe we show the percentage difference from step 1 to the top step. But it is that detailed review of the job description that we make use of as the primary source for determining this is a match or there's no match. In one particular case, in Oakland in particular, they don't have all of their job descriptions readily available. They don't currently have, they have all their salary schedules, but they have no information at their website that links a job classification title to a salary range. It's often missing. Sometimes when we're able to get a job description, it will have that link, but it's not as thoroughly linked as at Berkeley. So in some cases, we couldn't find the link. We attempted many times to contact them to get that information. They were fairly non-responsive. And I think some of that has to do with the size and the activity levels that they have.
Okay, thank you, Rick. I think I'm gonna turn it over to our other commissioners, and I see we have other commenters as well. Do you guys want to go ahead, or should we hear from our union representatives first? Okay, yes, Commissioner Goldstein.
Hi, Rick. Nice to see you. I want to make sure I understand that your median was calculated using the 2, 4, 6, 7 peer school districts.
Yes, and then we're comparing Berkeley outside of that calculation to that group.
Right. And then is there a differing cost of living index that applies to the school districts that are, you know, over the hills from us? Do you know?
We did not apply a COLA formula.
Okay, no cost of living index or anything.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. I'm all done.
That's it. Shall we hear from our union representatives? Please, Mildred or Frank.
I actually have a list of questions for Eric Hall and Associates, so I'm gonna not ask all the questions that I do have because it would take some time. And I want to be very thorough and very clear because there are many concerns that I do have for the whole report. And but one of the more okay, because it's a lot. I'm sorry. And this is actually the first time of us hearing from Eric Hall and Associates since November. So for me, or for us, we heard from Eric Hall and Associates through phase 1 and phase 2. Then we didn't hear from them anymore. Then we hear phase 3 and phase 4. It took a lot longer, which is a concern when phase 1 and phase 2 is your largest group. That was BCCE. Phase 3 is much shorter because that's your management, right? So one of the questions I have for Rick is that in the beginning, our very first meeting, a couple of meetings after, it was stated that we would not use the median because several of the committee members said that it was the issue with our last study, which was highly frowned upon by BUSD classified staff the last go around. But once we received phase 4, 6 months later, November, December, January, February, March, April, May, June, 7 months later, the median was still used. Why? If we decided that we weren't going to use the median. That's a
Shall we let Rick
Yes, I'm
respond to that?
asking, why did we use the median when we decided as a group that we were not going to use the median?
If you decided not to use the median, I would like to know what you did decide to use.
In the beginning, or do you recall, as a group, we said that we were not going to use the median?
You have you also have the average displayed, so you could use that information. It's available. But if you at some point, you have to compare to a data point. And the readily available data points would be the median or the average. The average itself is subject to wider swings. You can have 1 or 2 very high or very low data points that pull that number in a direction, sometimes too low or sometimes too high. Median is the middle value so that half of the comparisons are above and half are low. It's a more stable number. You can also use other data. Some districts have negotiated a percentage that they're going to be above or below whatever middle number they have. So if there was a feeling that you didn't want to use the median, I think the problem might be that we didn't ever receive direction as to what number you would want to use. And we did have to make calculations and we did have to give you information. You can see all of the individual values for each district that a match was made. So you have the individual data that you can then look at. And we assumed always that there would be some negotiations occurring, and you would have all of the information that we were able to obtain available to you to consider in your negotiations process.
Thank you, Rick. Did you want to ask an additional question, Mildred, or?
Well, I did.
Maybe
I
we
did
want the
also, and
commissioners.
that's why I think, because it actually would have been good for us, you know, just as a committee or people that were on the committee to actually have the opportunity to talk to the consultants, to ask questions that we never had an opportunity to ask after receiving the compensation. Because when we met, I think in May, when the steering committee had met after not meeting since, well, I think January, there were things that were stated because there were a lot of inconsistencies that we saw, or some of us saw when we received the compensation. Because it was also stated in that meeting that there were numbers that received or in the compensation piece that didn't match other numbers that we received when doing our investigation. And it was a question. And so it's just, there are a lot of, and I don't want to do the back and forth, you know what I mean? Because it is late. So we do need to have the opportunity to ask the questions. And all of this was stated to Charlie. So that's why it's just kind of a shock because, you know, we haven't heard from Erica and Associates. So all of a sudden it's just like we see the agenda and it's like, oh, they're here. But we've been asking these questions because it was also stated the committee showed concerns and agreed in the beginning of the study that we felt that the study should not focus on non-management positions to ensure that the recommendations made were not top heavy. These are my notes from the very beginning. And I still have them. And when in fact, there was more time spent for the study in phase 3. So I have all my notes from the beginning, and then I'm looking at what happened. So there are many concerns, and I don't want to take up the time, but BCCE is extremely concerned with this process. And I'm just telling you, where we're leaning, this is not something that we're supporting. I'm going to be very clear about that. And I am sure that they can tell you that I've been very verbal about how we felt about this study. Thank you.
Understood. Thank you very much. Commissioners, comments? The only comment I would make is, as I said before, this I do not think is the end of the discussion about this. It's really just the beginning of the discussion about it. And whether it's going to take place in meet and confer negotiations or before this commission, you know, that's to be determined. But comments from the commissioners, Mr. Carter, please.
I do have a question. Rick, how did you guys handle the employee responses? Was there a certain number that you were trying to get to, percentage of a specific class? There was a lot of concerns about employees not having a chance to reply to the questionnaire. Can you address how many you got per class?
Yeah.
Looking for?
I assume you're talking about phase 1 and 2, which was the 2 phases that we devoted for BCCE. And if you see that the program started in October of 2020, and we started with BCCE, we actually devoted close to 18 to 24 months on BCCE jobs. And we had we delayed often the process in order to do catch up. There were concerns about some of the classes not having access to computers. So we extended over a period of several months beyond the original target dates to accommodate those issues. So for example, we had a process where we sent people, I'm trying to remember exactly, we gave people an opportunity and made sure they got paper copies and opportunity to review. We like to see in a process that it's up to the employees. They're not required to respond. We think it's great if we get 40 to 60% response rate. And we did in some classes. In some classes, it's more difficult when you have a lot of instructional assistants Many of them are part-time, and so they don't take the time to give us the full benefit. But how many we receive from each job, I don't have that immediately in front of me. I believe it's reported in the reports, but if it's something that you do need to have, we can go back in the records and see what those numbers are and forward them on to your office.
I don't think I need the specifics. I'm more interested in how you handled the classes that you didn't get enough response from. So if 40 to 60 was like a target, and the classes that you didn't get 40 to 60 from, those are probably the people that we hear from the most. And so I'm interested in how did you handle those categories?
Well, we invited people to interviews, Commissioner, and so if we didn't get responses from the surveys, we then also extended opportunities for people to participate in interviews. We can't force people to come to the interviews, but and we also double checked with supervisors. The supervisors gave us input as to whether they agreed or disagreed. And in most of the cases, the supervisors felt that my recollection is the supervisors felt that what we were receiving was accurate. So we had some confidence moving forward that employees were telling us what they were giving us information was generally correct. And even if we had fewer numbers than we might have preferred, we had some confidence that if those people were also responding, their responses would likely be similar to the ones that we did receive. So we felt comfortable moving forward since people were not required to respond to the surveys. It was voluntary, but they were encouraged. I'm sure the union encouraged them to participate, and information was put at the website. So that would be, I think, the quickest way I could answer what you've asked.
Mr. Carter, if it's all right with you, we're running out of time, so Ms. Goldstein, please.
Maybe just two comments. One is just to make sure that everyone in this room understands that in attachment H, appendix D, those are the charts that Rick referred to, and they are a good visual representation of, where things shook out. This way you can understand what positions actually were looked at in the benchmark. I see most of the biggies here that we see in front of us with some frequency. My question for Rick is, did you do or could you do some kind of standard deviation analysis to help us understand, when you determined, that BUSD was, at or above or below the median? Is there a little bit of statistical analysis that we can also look at for that data?
We could prepare something for you. I don't think we have more statistical analysis at the ready, but if you have some specific things you would like to see, we would run those numbers for you.
Sure. So the kinds of things like chi-squared tests and things that just tell us the integrity of the data, is 80% right, 50% right, something like that, might also help our whole constituency have some better faith in what they're seeing. Might not, but if it's possible to do it, we'll write to you and let you know, the kind of analysis that we're looking for.
That's all, Commissioner?
That's all.
Okay. Well, one very brief clarification is I think that some of the dates, Rick, that you were using are actually too early. That I think it's more in 2021 rather than 2020 that this process began. But that's really a detail. So I think we're not going to have hardly any time. In fact, the people who have their hands up can make their remarks during public comment. We'll have 10 minutes for that. Otherwise, I think we're going to close this out for this meeting. I'm quite sure that Mr. Castillo will confer with the union and confer with the district on what next steps ought to be with especially for our commission as to what role the unions and the district would like us to play. We may not have any role in it at all, but maybe we can. So if Mr. Castillo, if you would, during this interim period, confer with the unions and confer with the district, I think we would all appreciate that. And I think I'm going to close out this portion of the meeting and go on to our 10 minutes of public comment. And I see we already have Malika and Rod Caraway who have their hands up. So how about this time we go back to Mr. Caraway, who could make, again, we're only devoting 10 minutes to this public comment period. So Mr. Caraway, please go ahead. If you could be as concise as possible, we'd appreciate it.
Yes, thank you for the opportunity. I wanted to express my concerns about the classification study. I appreciate the work that was done, but I actually thought, go ahead, Bobby. I actually thought that it was over. I thought it had stopped because I hadn't heard anything since last fall. I think it was October or November. I did the edit, the interview. I seen the stuff that my supervisor or management had put in there. Put my edits in there. Never heard anything back until I seen the thing for the meeting this week. So that's very concerning. I've been here a long time, and this is the fourth or fifth classification study I went through, and I thought that we see our job descriptions at the end of this when the phase 1 or 2 was complete. I didn't even know we were in the compensation. And I want to close with also, I've researched myself the other districts. And like I said earlier at the first public comment, our positions, he said, I appreciate that he said they looked at the jobs that would match, but they chose in my class a maintenance technician. And maintenance techs in other districts do different things than our maintenance tech. So the salaries are not even close. So I think it's not fair to our class that they chose a position, go ahead, Robbie, that was not an adequate position. I would have preferred if they had took a maintenance engineer, which is more of a trade type position, where then you could have looked at electricians, plumbers, or whatever. And it's our middle position in our class in the maintenance department. So yeah, I want to close with that. I'm glad that this is not the end and the beginning of the discussion, but I think there's more work needs to be done so we can have a fair and equitable classification and compensation study. I would love to see my job description after phase 2. If possible. Is there anywhere I can see it, sir?
Thank you. Thank you very much for your comments. They will definitely be taken into consideration as this project moves forward into its next phase. Malika, did you want to go ahead?
It's actually Malika Upshur, but yeah, Mally.
Malika,
But I wanted to say, it's okay. It's crazy. But I wanted to say that I do agree with Rod and all classified staff. For the matter, I am a confidential employee, so I do have certain knowledge and certain things that I, have to be very careful about when I speak about. The one thing about me is I deal with classified employees on a day-to-day basis, and I try to make it very clear and be very equitable in making sure that the contracts and union language and merit rules are being met. I do have an issue with as being a part of the class and comp study. No disrespect for the Executive Director Charlie Castillo, Aaron Arenas, or anybody from EHA, but I do have an issue with the final process for the class and comp studies, there was a lot of things we discussed as part of the committee without being too open. A lot of things we discussed were to avoid certain issues and certain things to have came to fruition in the end, and they kind of went ignored. And a couple of those things were us to not do the class and comp study according to how I can't remember what the other company was because they are in the past. But the last company that did our study, it was very frowned upon. You know, like the way that they did our study, there was a lot of things that the district employees disagreed with, classified staff disagreed with, that we came to I felt like as a committee, we came to an understanding about. And if I feel like a lot of those things were ignored, and then we get to the end, we came to the third and the fourth phases, and we didn't even have, sorry, EJ, but we did not even have EHA to answer any of our significant concerns. Don't know what the reason is behind it, but we did not even have, as a committee for the class and comp study, anybody from EHA to explain what the reasonings behind their decisions was. I don't know if it was a district, a PC, or EHA decision. So I'm not blaming anyone. Let's be clear. But we never, as a committee for the class and comp study, got to finalize our decisions and our part as a compensation and classification and compensation study committee to actually get the answers to the final portion of our project. I feel like it's very much undone. I feel like we asked a lot of questions, and we had questions being answered inadvertently from either the PC director, Charlie, you answered everything as much as you felt like you could have. And then we had other answers from the Local 21 director, which I feel like was out of turn because it was kind of a conflict of interest if you look at it to a certain extent. But we never finalized our process as the committee members to make sure that what we are bringing forth for our classified staff is exactly what it needs to be. If the committee, and I've spoken to majority of the committee, if the committee does not feel like they are comfortable with moving forward, we had a survey sent to us. Where's the survey? Where's the answers? Where's the questions that we have asked? I'm not saying that I don't want to go with what the class and comp study is saying. What I'm saying is I feel like it's not done. It's not done correctly. And me being a classified employee and a part of the committee, I don't feel comfortable because the questions that we have asked have not been answered. We didn't even have AHA a part of our meetings. We had a meeting about phase 3 and 4, and we couldn't even get our questions answered. So how are we? I feel like we're moving too far. We're not done. Because how are we moving here in this moment I don't want us to make a decision. I want our decision to be solely not based off of me, not based off of y'all decision, not just solely based off of what other people think. EHA, they don't work for the district. I want our decision to be the best, the 100% best decision for classified staff. Doesn't matter our positions, our thoughts. I want it to be a decision that wholeheartedly is thinking about, and we take into account all of these things, all of their concerns, all of these things to where we feel comfortable as a committee to say we did our thing. We made sure that they came in We made sure that all of our questions were answered, and we feel 100%, maybe not 100, maybe like 90. We feel 90% for sure that this is in the best interest for our classified staff, because what are we here for otherwise?
Okay, thank you, Malika.
Okay, I'm
think-
done.
No, I think you were very eloquent.
Sorry, I went a little bit over, but I just wanted to be clear. I'm very
I
passionate about classified staff. I do this. I deal with them all day. I get the questions, I get the calls, I
I'm gonna have
answer.
to Stop you
Okay.
because we have
All
to adjourn the meeting.
Thank you, Izzy. I
in-
appreciate you.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate you, Izzy. Bye.
So our next meeting date is August 28th. And we have 1 minute if there's something that the commissioners would like to express. Otherwise, we will stand adjourned. Okay, we will stand adjourned. Thank you all very much.